So Pete Hegseth is being put up for, which is the former Fox News host, also former military active combat veteran, who's being nominated for Secretary of Defense. And it would be stupid to not say that Pete Hegseth is an unconventional pick. Pete Hegseth absolutely is an unconventional pick. But that doesn't necessarily mean he's unqualified. That doesn't necessarily mean that he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's a military veteran, an active combat veteran that also has written several books as to what is wrong and what should be changed within the military. So to be the Secretary of Defense, basically like the general of the generals, just under the president for that matter, would be a good place for a person with those kinds of ideas. And so he was questioned about a lot of things, and there's a few, and so I'll outline before we get into it. He was questioned about diversity. He was questioned about women in the military. He was questioned about his own history, specifically potential alleged drunkenness and cheating. But here's the thing, is the way these questions were framed, the way he answered them, and the way even other senators came back about it is so telling about our government. So let's start off with the idea of diversity. Senator Reid from, I believe, Rhode Island asked Pete Hegseth this about diversity in the military, as Pete has been traditionally critical of the diversity quotas within the military. Here's this questioning.
Service and the all-volunteer force visibly reflects the nation it protects. Our military is more diverse than it has ever been, but more importantly, it is more lethal than it has ever been. This is not a coincidence. Mr. Hegseth, I hope you will explain why you believe such diversity is making the military weak and how you are relevant.
So how is diversity making the military weak? Well, here's actually the fact of the matter is that the vast majority of the military is straight white men. The vast majority. And he's not necessarily wrong that Mr. Reid, Senator Reid, is not wrong when he says that the military is more diverse today than it ever has been. But our military today is also weaker than it pretty much ever has been. And I know he tries to claim, oh, well, it's more lethal, whatever. No, that's not true. Look, Pete Hegseth even says at another point in this that we won World War II with seven 4-star generals, and now we have like 44. And there's an inverse relationship between wars won and generals that we have. And that leads to the idea of the bureaucracy. Well, that's the thing, is the fact of the matter is our military is not particularly diverse. The people that are most attracted to the idea of the military tend to be straight white men, especially men in general, because it is a masculine thing to want to fight. And we'll talk about women in the military, but I want to discuss just momentarily about what Pete wants to do when it comes to diversity. And he talks about this a little bit in his answer, but I think it's so important to instead bring up, this is General Mark Milley, who was the former chairman for the Joint Chiefs of Staff, discussing, I believe, white rage. This is a general in the military earlier, just a few years ago.
That we train and we understand, and I want to understand white rage, and I'm white, and I want to understand it. So what is it that caused thousands of people to assault this building
January 6th
and try to overturn the Constitution of the United States of America? What caused that? I want to find that out. I want to maintain an open mind here, and I do want to analyze it. It's important that we understand that, because our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians, they come from the American people. So it is important that the leaders, now and in the future, do understand it. I've read Mao Zedong. I've read Karl Marx. I've read Lenin. That doesn't make me a communist. So what is wrong with understanding, having some situational understanding about the country for which we are here to defend? And I personally find it offensive that we are accusing the United States military, our general officers, our commissioned, non-commissioned officers, of being, quote, woke or something else, because we're studying some theories that are out there.
But why? What is the point of it? The point of our military is to be effective. The point of our military is to fight and win. Look, when it comes to combat, it is a meritocracy. It doesn't mean a meritocracy based on on brute force and your ability to exert it efficiently. It isn't, oh, well, look how many gay people they have. Look how many trannies. Look how many shehis they have in their military. Look how many, do they meet the quota for the blacks and the Islams and the Jews and all, and the Mormons and every religion and every, no. That's not what they care about. That's, when I say they, I mean the enemy. That's not what the enemy cares about. The enemy cares about how many of us are dead versus how many of them. Who won? And so you studying white rage, Mark Milley, means nothing. And that's what Pete Hegseth wants to do when he discusses the idea of getting rid of woke in the military. Well, further, the idea of diversity gets perpetuated from the fact that Pete Hegseth has been critical of the standards of our military and the way they have changed to meet diversity quotas. Kirsten Gillibrand, like a 5-year-old child, went on a particular rant regarding this during the hearing, and I just think it's worth watching to see how petulant some of our senators are.
I appreciate your comments, and I would point out I have never disparaged women serving in the military. I respect every single female service member that has put on the uniform, past and present. My critiques, Senator, recently and in the past, and from personal experience, have been instances where I've seen standards lowered, and you mentioned 11 Alpha, 11 Bravo, MOS, places in units, and the book that has been referenced multiple times here, The War on Warriors. I spent months talking to active duty service members, men and women, low ranks, high ranks, combat arms and not combat arms. And what each and every one of them told me, and which personal instances have shown me, is that in ways direct, indirect, overt, and subtle, standards have been changed inside infantry training units, ranger school, infantry battalions, to ensure that
Give me one example. Please give me an example. I get you're making these generalized
meet
statements.
Quotas to have a certain number of female infantry officers or infantry enlisted, and that disparages those women.
Commanders do not have to be quotas for the infantry. Commanders do not have to have a quota for women in the infantry. That does not exist. It does not exist. And your statements are creating the impression that these exist, because they do not. There are not quotas. We want the most lethal force. But I'm telling you, having been here for 15 years, listening to testimony about men and women in combat and the type of operations that were successful in Afghanistan and in Iraq, women were essential for many of those units. When Ranger units went in to find where the terrorists hiding in Afghanistan or in Iraq, if they had a woman in the unit, they could go in, talk to the women in a village, say, where are the terrorists hiding? Where are the weapons hiding? And get crucial information to make sure that we can win that battle. So you cannot denigrate women in general, and your statements do that. We don't want women in the military, especially in combat. What a terrible statement. So please, do not deny that you've made those statements. You have. We take the responsibility of standards very seriously, and we will work with you. I'm equally distressed you would not meet with me before this hearing. We could have covered all of this before you came here, so I could get to the 15 other questions that I want to get to. So women, you have denigrated. You have also denigrated members of the LGBT.
He literally said earlier in there, I mean, listen to it.
Personal experience have been instances where I've seen standards lowered, and you mentioned 11 Alpha, 11 Bravo, MOS, places in units, and
So he's seen standards lower, and then she says, we get here. Let's get to when she actually speaks.
Well, please give me an example. I get you're making these generalized statements.
Quotas to have.
Please give her an example. Easy. This is back in 2022. The Associated Press, Army eases fitness test standards for women and older troops. Perfect example. Kirsten Gillibrand. Took a very simple Google search. Didn't even have this ready for my show yet. I did this while the clip was playing. Kirsten Gillibrand, this is a perfect example. And this is what he has talked about. And then further within it, he even explains his opinion a little bit more directly to Senator Joni Ernst of Iowa, who is a Republican, so it was going to be a little less adversarial. But here's this.
Of Defense, will you support women continuing to have the opportunity to serve in combat roles?
Senator, first of all, thank you for your service, as we discussed extensively as
It's
well.
my privilege.
And my answer is yes, exactly the way that you caveated it. Yes, women will have access to ground combat roles, combat rows, given the standards remain high, and we'll have a review to ensure the standards have not been eroded in any one of these cases. That'll be part of one of the first things we do at the Pentagon, is reviewing that in a gender neutral way, the standards, ensuring readiness and meritocracy is front and center. But absolutely, it would be the privilege of a lifetime to, if confirmed, to be the Secretary of Defense for all men and women in uniform who fight so heroic. They have so many other options. They decide to put their right hand up for our country, and it would be an honor to have a chance to lead them.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not an unlogical position. In fact, not only is it not unlogical, I guarantee you, if you ask, and I don't have the exact statistics, I'll admit this before I even say it, but I guarantee you, if you ask the majority of Americans, if they believe that standards should be lower for women to be in combat, then they would probably say no, it should not. In fact, you'd probably have a significant portion that are questioning why we would allow that, because not only is it unsafe to the women if their standards are lower and if they are not actually qualified to go into combat, but we allow them for a diversity quota and to say, oh, look how many women we have serving in combat roles. It's also it is dangerous to the women that actually are qualified and meet those physical standards. And it's dangerous for the men that stand beside them that have met those physical standards. So we should have standards, and they should be high. And we should have a fierce military and prioritize that, a fierce, effective, and a lethal military, and prioritize that over any level of skin color or sexuality or gender. And might I also point out how ironic it is that the same people that complain and call Pete a sexist for saying that women should be held to the same standards as men to be in the military, not only claim that men can become women, women can become men, and that biological men should play in women's sports, but also B, don't even know what a woman is. Heck, Mazie Hirono, who I'm going to bring up soon, but also Kirsten Gillibrand, voted to confirm a Supreme Court justice who couldn't identify what a woman was. So all of a sudden now you care? And now you know what a woman is? Sorry, I don't even think you should be sitting at this table asking these questions about women when you can't even define it. That said, Mazie Hirono, who I think might be the dumbest person in the Senate ever since Kamala Harris left, senator from Hawaii, wants to ask Pete about his history of alleged drunkenness. Well, she won't even let him answer any of the questions. And when he attempts to, she won't let him. And I think this is a great exchange to show exactly what the Democrats are doing here.
I have read multiple reports of your regularly being drunk at work, including by people who worked with you at Fox News. Do you know that being drunk at work is prohibited for service members under the UCMJ?
Senator, those
Yes
are
or no?
multiple false anonymous reports peddled by NBC
Do
News.
you know?
Okay, so I want to keep going with this because he attempts to answer, and I get, like, she might think that, oh, well, he's evading the question, but he's calling the reports false. And so the importance of that is, imagine he walked in and imagine you were going in to be questioned about something, and the person that has the authority to decide whatever it is, yes or no, on whatever they're questioning you about, just comes in and says, you know, my friend told me you cheated on your wife. With no factual evidence, no, like, nothing. There's nothing there to prove this potential or alleged behavior. But they just come in and have an absolutely insane allegation against you. And they're just like, oh my God, I heard you did this. What do you have to say about that? And then when you try to say, I didn't, like, that this is a false allegation, like, this isn't true. And they're like, okay, don't answer my question. Well, how are you supposed to answer a question that doesn't have a reality and fact? Is not based in reality. How are you supposed to do that? And that's what he's attempting to do. And then she gets mad because, and is like, yes or no, yes or no. Well, it's neither yes nor no because it's just not a thing. It didn't happen.
That run directly
drinking on the job
contradictory to
is
the dozens of men and women at
not
Fox News
contemplated
Channel
on it.
who I work with
I'm
who
not
came
hearing
on
the
the
answer to my
record
question.
and said they've
In your
never
opening
seen
statement,
that.
Mr. Hegseth,
She's not hearing the answer to the question because she's not listening at all to an answer. She's asking these questions to try to posture.
that you commit to holding leaders accountable at all levels. That includes you, of course. And frankly, as secretary, you will be on the job 24/7. You recently promised some of my Republican colleagues that you stopped drinking and won't drink if confirmed, correct?
Absolutely.
Will you resign as Secretary of Defense if you drink on the job, which is a 24/7 position?
I've made this commitment on behalf of the
Will you
men and women I'm
resign as
serving.
Secretary of Defense
I've
if
made this
you
commitment
drink
on
on the
behalf
job?
of the men and women I'm serving.
I'm not
because it's the
hearing-
most important deployment
I'm not
of my
hearing an
life.
answer to my question.
You're not hearing an answer, you dumb imbecile, which I realize is redundant, but it's necessary to highlight just how moronic Mazie Hirono is. You're not hearing an answer because you're not listening. He's trying to answer. He's trying to tell you, I've made this commitment. I'm adhering to this commitment. I'm giving you exactly what you're asking for. Like, that's basically what he's saying. And she won't even let him answer. I'm not hearing my answer. I'm not hearing you're not hearing it, dummy, because you're not listening. But not only did they stoop so low to try to just get him on alleged previous drunkenness from mainstream media sources. No, Tim Kaine, who I think it's important to note, and you'll see why in a moment. Tim Kaine, who was Hillary Clinton's vice presidential pick, which many people forgot, that senator from Virginia, which I don't claim him, even though I now live in Virginia. He tries to talk about, with the most smug look on his face, looks like a mad scientist, but a smug mad scientist, tries to accuse and make allegations regarding Pete Hegseth's potential cheating and unfaithfulness in a previous marriage, and also seems to bring in his 7-year-old daughter about it. Here's this.
Completely cleared. Can you so casually cheat on a second wife and cheat on the mother of a child that had been born 2 months before, and you tell us you are completely cleared? How is that a complete clear?
Senator, her child's name is Gwendolyn Hope Hegseth, and she's a child of God, and she's 7 years old.
And she
I'm
was,
glad
and
she's here.
you cheated on the mother of that child less than 2 months after that daughter was born, didn't you?
Those were false charges.
Well,
It
no,
was fully investigated, and I was completely cleared. And I
Completely cleared. Can you so
See that
casually
smugness?
cheat on a second wife?
This is for a man who's going to be the potential Secretary of Defense. So one, this questioning about drunkenness, and it's not simply asking, because I can understand, like, if you firmly believe that the person that was up was like an ardent alcoholic and you suspected them being drunk right there and then yeah, sure, maybe asking them about it or asking about the history, like, have you dealt with that, is an understandable question. But the way they're asking these are clearly character attacks that are not related to him being confirmed by any means. It's simply to attempt to destroy him in the public eye by utilizing alleged and not really, not well alleged, not factually alleged, not evidentially alleged. No, just random allegations against him. They're trying to bring those up to just attack his character instead of actually trying to understand how he would govern in his role. And not to mention how hypocritical, and the reason I know this is because of how hypocritical it is. That's truly how I know. Because Tim Kaine is trying to get him and be a gotcha about being about Pete being unfaithful, allegedly, but also was the running mate of Hillary Clinton, the wife of the president that was famous for his extramarital affair while in office. Like, seriously? And you're going to try to be the moral high ground on this issue? Really? You're going to try to be the moral high ground. Not to mention the fact that he also campaigned big with Doug Emhoff, who also like had been cucked by his ex-wife and then forced her to have an abortion or something like that. I don't know the exact allegation on that one. But I do know that Doug Emhoff has also been steeped in controversy regarding an extramarital affair. Like, this is not, you're not the guy. You're also the party of like JFK, who's famous for sleeping with Marilyn Monroe. Like, and Republicans aren't free and clear of extramarital affairs. I'm not saying that by any means. What I'm saying is that you can't try to act like the moral authority on any of this when you're just as guilty of it yourself within your own party. And actually, this is brought up expertly by Senator Mullen. Senator Mullen demolishes these moral high ground, high horse sitters that need to get off of it. And that's almost exactly what he says right here.
Senator Kaine, or I guess I better use the senator from Virginia, starts bringing up the fact that what if you showed up drunk to your job? How many senators have showed up drunk to vote at night? Have any of you guys asked them to step down and resign from their job?
Have you?
And don't tell me you haven't seen it, because I know you have. And then how many senators do you know have got a divorce before cheating on their wives? Did you ask them to step down? No.
Did you? No.
But it's for show. You guys make sure you make a big show and point out the hypocrisy because the man's made a mistake. And you want to sit there and say that he's not qualified? Give me a joke. I mean, it is so ridiculous that you guys hold yourself as this higher standard and you forget you got a big plank in your eye. We've all made mistakes. Senator Kaine, or I guess I better use...
We have all made mistakes. We have all made mistakes. And that's why it's important to point out that while they try to drag when I say they, these Democrats, Kirsten Gillibrand, Mazie Hirono, Tammy Duckworth, who I didn't bring her clip up, but Tammy Duckworth, Senator Kaine, all these people are trying to drag his name through the mud from past mistakes. But at no point do they ever recognize that maybe the man who has admittedly made mistakes himself, he has admitted many of the mistakes that he did admit at one point. I believe that he had some level of a drinking problem. He did admit that he had been I'm pretty sure it's admitted that he has been unfaithful in some ways. Not necessarily in the ways alleged of him, like showing up drunk to work or cheating at the time that he was being claimed. But what was never asked necessarily, but he brought on his own, is what he believes now and the kind of man he is now. And that's why I think this is probably the most important clip of the entire hearing. Here's this.
And as Jenny and I pray together every morning, all glory, regardless of the outcome, belongs to our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. His grace and mercy abounds each day. May his will be done.
May his will be done. And that's why God bless Pete Hegseth for going through all of this. Like, good for him. And honestly, that's our next defense secretary. There's honestly nothing that you could, I'm positive that he will get enough of the vote to become our next defense. Subscribe and ring that notification bell. Turn it to all. You won't miss a minute of what I'm talking about. You can also check me out on Rumble and Twitter, where I also stream these. So everybody, God bless you. God bless America. And as I always say, thank you so much for watching Speechless. And God bless soon to be President Trump.